Thank you, Sonia. On behalf of Sonia, though, too, let me thank you for the ways in which you have sought to be an encouragement to her as her mother just passed a little over a week ago and just had the service this past week. So continue to remember Sonia. Those of you who have been down that road of losing a parent, especially a mother. As a large family, we buy a lot of groceries, and buying a lot of groceries, if you're going to be doing that, one of the places, or some of the places you're going to regularly go to, though, are places like Sam's and Costco. And we go to both of them. And a couple of years ago, I guess it was, Sam's started something that if you're a Sam's Club member and you haven't tried, you need to go there today and try this, okay? Just write this in your Bible. Go to Sam's today. But they've got this app, and it's called Scan and Go. And how it works is, and you'll need about 5 minutes or so to kind of get it set up the first time. And I'd encourage you to do that at home. You'll have to log in or download the app, and you log in and you link it to a credit card. But once you've done that, then you're good to go. And so as you're in the store and you pick an item off of the shelf and you put it in your bag, you can go ahead and scan it. And so when you have gotten all the items that you want to buy, you've already scanned them, and you just slide the little button that says checkout. Do you want to pay? Yes, I want to pay. And so then it spits out a barcode, and you show that to the person on your way out. Now, what I love is especially if you go to a Sam's on like a Saturday, and there, like lines back to the freezer section, and I'm walking out with my phone. Suckers. Now, hearing that, you may think, well, that is a recipe ripe for shoplifting. But how they guard against that is that once you've clicked checkout, it spits out a barcode, and when you go past the attendant there at the exit, they scan that code, and then they randomly scan 3 different items in your cart, and the device they're using shows the most expensive items that are in your cart as well. So they're going to make sure they see all of those things and just randomly kind of spot checking, making sure that you've gotten everything that's in your buggy you've actually paid for. And so I have sought to be very diligent in this. And so typically what I try to do is that as I'm putting items in the cart, I try to go ahead and scan it, because if you wind up with a pile of them in there, you don't have to sort through all of that. So I try, as I'm doing the shopping, to put it in there. But sometimes I forget. And sometimes I wind up, I'm at the end and I'm trying to go through with my phone. I'm trying to make sure that I've scanned everything. I've already scanned. Anyway. But sincerely, I want to make sure that I do this diligently. I want to do this carefully. I want to make sure that everything I'm walking out of here I've actually paid for. I want to do this with honesty. I want to do this with integrity. But there have been at least 2 occasions where I have gone out and they scanned something and I haven't scanned it. Thank you for your tithes and offerings. They have paid bail twice. No, I'm just... No, but what happens if they find something that you haven't paid for, then you have to step over to the side, and then you pay for that, and then they scan that, and then you're able to go out. And what I so desperately loathe and hate about that experience is this: I have sought to be operating with integrity. I've sought to be diligent in this, and here I am. I'm walking out with something that I haven't paid for, that I actually haven't scanned, and I'm telling the attendant, I am so sorry. Somehow, some way, I missed that. And even though they don't do this, my thought is they're like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, fat boy needs him some popcorn he's going to try to sneak out of here with. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bald-headed guy needs that shampoo. Yeah, you... And as much as and as sincerely as I'm trying to muster my apologies, my thought is they're probably thinking, this guy is just like anybody else, just trying to sneak something out of here. And it's another one of these shoplifters. And so I so desperately can't stand that feeling and loathe that experience. I want to be very diligent, very diligent. So when I go to Sam's now, I don't just check, I recheck and then double check to make sure that every item I'm going out with, I've actually scanned and I have actually paid for, because I've discovered that before I was operating with confidence, and I discovered it was actually overconfidence. And overconfidence many times will get you in trouble. Now, understand me in this. There's plenty of times where you want to operate and to deal with those
who are operating with confidence. For example, just as a listener here this morning, hopefully you would want and you desire that if it's me, whoever it is that's standing up here speaking, that there is some confidence you have that they actually know what they're talking about. I know the jury is still out at this point, but you want to have confidence that the one that's speaking to you has there's some confidence that they know what they're saying is actually accurate. I mean, how many of you, when you're going to a surgeon, you're just looking in the phone book and you call them and say, "What's your price on this?" and find the cheap one, right? Now, you want a surgeon that's confident in being able to perform your procedure. So we love confidence, but we're also aware that overconfidence can be a real trap, and it can cause us real trouble. Now, that's true not just in life and going to Sam's Club, but it can also be true for those of us that are followers of Jesus in our relationship with Him. Now, understand me, there are some things to be sure that we need to be confident of. We need to be confident that when we're operating in this world that is surrounded by all sorts of chaos and tumult, we need to be confident that God's still on the throne and God is still in charge. We need to be confident that when we've begun a relationship with Him, that what Jesus said is true, that if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. There are tons of things about what God has said about Himself, what He said about ourselves, what He said from His Word to us that we need to be confident about. But something that we need to really guard and keep in check is this. I need to make sure that I'm not overconfident concerning my relationship with Him. I don't want to be overconfident about my commitment to Him. Now, we're thinking about this today as the first in a new series that's going to lead us through Easter that we're calling 3 Days and Denials. And what we're doing is going to be looking at the example of a guy that you're familiar with, a guy named Peter. And today we're going to say Peter is a guy that was absolutely operating with overconfidence concerning his commitment to Jesus. And the mistakes that he made are those that I don't want to make, that hopefully you don't want to make as well. So here's the question we want to think about today. How is it that I can prevent being overconfident about my commitment to Jesus? How is it that you can prevent yourself from being overconfident about your commitment to Jesus? We see the answer to that today in Matthew chapter 26. If you would look with me there in your Bibles today, Matthew chapter 26, and we're going to start reading with verse 31. Matthew 26, starting with verse 31, we're told that Jesus said to them, that's the disciples, "Tonight all of you will fall away because of me. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter told him, "Even if everyone falls away because of you, I will never fall away." That's some confidence, isn't it? "Truly, I tell you," Jesus said, "tonight before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter says, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you." And all the disciples said the same thing. If you want to see what confidence, in fact, if you want to see more specifically what overconfidence looks like, you don't have to go to the dictionary. You can go to Matthew chapter 26. And here we've got this guy that is in so many ways a hero to us as followers of Jesus, one of the most committed people to Jesus, operating with overconfidence concerning his commitment to Jesus, because he's saying, hey, I am never going to back away from this. I'm never going to walk away. But Jesus says before tomorrow shows up, you're going to do it 3 times. I don't want to make that same mistake. I hope you don't either. So what can we do? The first thing that we need to do is this. We need to remember that our decision about Jesus is not singular. You need to remember that your decision about Jesus is not singular. We find ourselves in the 26th chapter of Matthew. There's only 28 chapters. That's a really strong indicator that we're nearing the end of the story of the earthly life and ministry of Jesus. It is really late in the ministry of Jesus. In fact, it is the last night of his earthly life and ministry. This is what we're going to be celebrating this on a Maundy Thursday service just before Easter. But it was the Thursday night before what we come to know as Good Friday. This is the last time that Jesus is going to have this time with the disciples. This is going to be the last time that they're going to do something they've done stacks of times before as faithful Jews, and that's to celebrate the Passover meal. So they have gathered on this Thursday night, and in celebrating the Passover meal, it's been going on since the days of Moses, where the people of God were intentionally celebrating and reminding themselves through symbols that God makes promises that He keeps, that God said that He was going to deliver us, and He did, and that God made possible our freedom through the shedding of blood. And Jesus is getting ready to take that symbol and infuse it with new meaning. But for generation after generation, for multiplied millennia, the people of God have been celebrating this. And the disciples have gathered that night to celebrate this. And we're told in verse 30 that after having finished this, verse 30, after singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. You know what's getting ready to happen then. There's going to be this time of prayer. Judas is going to consummate his betrayal. All that stuff is getting ready to happen. Now, what we just read starting in verse 31, I don't know if they're still in the room or maybe they're walking along headed to the Mount of Olives. But Jesus says to the disciples, all of you will fall away because of me. All of you will fall away because of me. The word that is translated as fall away, or as these two words, fall away, is a singular word in Greek, and it gives us our English word scandal. And it literally means to cause to stumble, or cause to trip, to cause to fall. And Jesus says, I am going to be the reason that all of you are going to be stumbling and falling. Well, what is it that he's saying here? Let me flesh it out this way. I have made mental note, maybe you have done the same thing, but if I go to Target, I want to make sure of this. Do not wear a red shirt. So if you go to Target this afternoon, don't wear a red shirt. Why? Because if you do, what's going to happen? Somebody's going to ask you, what aisle's the soap on? Why? Because the employees there wear red shirts. And if you wear one, because this has happened to me, have you ever asked a customer, can you tell me where something is? And they turn around, they don't have a name tag on, but you thought, no, they've got the red shirt, they must be working here. And so having experienced that and made to look stupid before, I want to make sure that I don't cause somebody else to stumble either. So I want to make sure that I don't wear a red shirt so that I don't cause them to stumble. And so what do? I want to completely disassociate myself from that which would cause them to stumble. That's what Jesus is saying to his disciples. Every single one of you is going to disassociate from me. Because, again, this is a word that it means scandal, or comes to us in English as scandal. What do you want to do with a scandal? You want to avoid a scandal. That which could cause you to stumble and fall, what do you want to do? You want to avoid that. And Jesus says to his disciples, that's how all of you are going to do concerning me. And hearing this, what does Peter do? Now, we're not told about his physical disposition, but as you read this, likely, like I just imagine this, that Peter clicks his heels, he squares his shoulders back, and he says with not just confidence, but with overconfidence, even if everyone falls away, I will never fall away. Jesus, fat chance, that is not going to happen. I'm not falling away from you tonight, not tomorrow night, not any night, ever, ever, ever. I will never fall away. In fact, he says then in verse 35, even if I have to die with you, even if it costs me my life, there's not one chance, not one scintilla of possibility that I am ever going to be walking away, falling away from you, disassociating myself from you. Peter is aghast at this, and he is confident about what? He is confident about the commitment that he has to Jesus. But more than confident, he is overconfident concerning his commitment to Jesus, thinking that stepping away, disassociating from Jesus, I would never, ever, ever do that. When Jesus makes this statement, and having told Peter this is going to happen 3 times before the rooster crows at the crack of dawn in the morning, maybe it was that Peter, in his mind, goes back to what we read in this same gospel back in Matthew chapter 4. This is at the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, and in verse 18 of chapter 4 in Matthew, we're told that as Jesus was walking along the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, that's Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the sea because they were fishermen, and Jesus said, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Verse 20, immediately they left their nets and followed him. My inclination is that when Jesus said to the disciples, including Peter, you're going to completely disassociate yourself from me, Peter likely went back in his mind to this day. And he decided, you know what, wait a minute. I remember when I first met you, when I first encountered you, and I said, and I threw my hat into the ring. At that point, I signed on the dotted line, and I said, I am with you, and I have left everything. And for the past 3 years, I haven't been hanging out at my house. I've been staying wherever you were. I didn't do what I wanted to do. I didn't go to the places I wanted to go. I went wherever you were. And I made that decision then, and nothing about that has changed. And so I believe there was this thought that I have made this decision, I have checked this box, and so I don't need to revisit whatsoever my decision concerning Jesus. Now, hear me in this. I am not suggesting whatsoever. I'm not seeking to imply, I am not hinting at all that you, once you become a child of God, that somehow you get kicked out of the family, that somehow there is the loss of salvation. However, what I am saying is this, that when someone makes a decision to follow Jesus, as Simon Peter did, very easily what we can do is say, all right, I have become a part of the family, I'm on the team, I have signed up to follow Jesus, and we think, I've made that decision, and so I don't need to think about following Him today and tomorrow, at work on Tuesday, at school on Wednesday. Because I've already checked the box, I've already made a decision about Jesus. Let me illustrate it this way. A friend of mine some years ago told me, with some measure of pride, that he and his wife were having a conversation one day, and she was telling him, you don't verbalize your feelings to me enough. And I wish that you would express to me how it is that you feel about me in words more often. And his response to this was, I told you that I loved you, and if it changes, I'll let you know. And if you want to try that out, I've got some openings for funerals this week. Got one already booked tomorrow. I don't know. That's pretty ratty, isn't it? Sure it is. Yes, I told you I loved you then, but there's still opportunity today to demonstrate this is still how I feel. I want you to know and I want to demonstrate to you that I am still in and that I'm still choosing today and I'm still making the decision today to express how it is that I feel about you. We do well to remind ourselves of what many times you've seen on the placard of someone's door from Joshua 24:15, where Joshua said this to the children of Israel. He said, choose you this day, who you're going to serve. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Understand me, I'm not suggesting at all that you get saved multiplied times. That happens once. You become part of the family of God once. You had a physical birth once, you will have a spiritual birth once. What I am cautioning against is, and what I believe Peter's example reminds us, is that it can be a trap to say, okay, I made the decision to follow Jesus initially, so I don't need to make any decisions about Him today. But today presents you with opportunities to decide, am I going to actually follow Him today? Am I going to obey Him today? Am I going to associate with Him today? Or am I going to act like somebody, I don't know who that is? Peter was confident, but he was overconfident about his commitment to Jesus. And I think every day, in response to this, it is the case that we need to have in our heart, maybe even verbalize it in a conversation to God, to say this: you matter to me. Thank you for bringing me into a relationship with you. Thank you that I can be in a relationship with you today. Help me to act like I'm following you. Help me to make decisions today where I'm following you today. When we fail to do that, when we just think, okay, I decided back then, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, I followed you, I made that decision back then. Many times what we do is to practice not just confidence, but overconfidence about our commitment to Jesus. And what happened to Peter very well could happen to us, and that we are effectively disassociating ourselves today and what we're saying to others about our commitment to Jesus. Remember, the decision about Jesus is not singular, but there's another thing you need to do, and that's this. Do not assess your commitment to Jesus based on your perception of others. Do not assess your commitment to Jesus based on your perception of others. Twice in this passage, Peter is unequivocal about his commitment. He's unequivocal in his pronouncements. He says at the end of verse 3, no, excuse me, at the end of verse 33, he says, even if everyone falls away, I will what? I will never fall away. Verse 35, I will never deny you. Did you realize never could pass so quickly? Because Jesus says, before tomorrow, 3 times. It's not even 24 hours. It's in a night. But Peter has said what? Never, ever, ever, ever. Not going to happen to me. Fat chance, Jesus, there's no way this is happening to me. I'm not going to do this. I will not ever fall away. But notice in verse 33, this catches my attention. I hope it does yours. Peter says this, even if everyone falls away because of you, I won't. I will never do this. When he says everyone there, of whom or about whom do you think he is speaking? Now, who all is in conversation here? Jesus is addressing the disciples. And when he says to everyone, who do you think he's talking about? I think Peter's talking about the rest of these disciples. And I believe when he says this and makes this unequivocal pronouncement to Jesus, I am with you, period, end of story, even if the rest of these schmucks, this band of losers, if the rest of them fall away, not going to happen to me. I think you can almost see some snide bravado in this, where he's like, I always kind of thought John was a pansy anyway. Andrew's my brother, but he's really a Nancy anyway. I could see them maybe walking away. I don't know. I mean, they're in, but I mean, like, they're not me. What he does is to say it's never going to happen, but notice how he couches his pronouncement. It's based on what? His assessment of the commitment of others. And how does he assess their commitment? It's so-so. Even if they fall away, I won't. But I believe as Peter says this, he's envisioning, well, I can see some cracks over there. You know, that they don't, I mean, I can see the weakness there. I remember when they did this. I remember when they did that. And what he's doing is looking at others. And what does he do as he looks at others? He sees their weaknesses. Does he see their strengths? No, because instinctively as people, that is exactly how we operate. Let me give you an example. Caroline and I, we don't go out to eat, especially as a family. We don't go out very often because you have to mortgage the house to do so. But anyway, one of our favorite places to go, if you've never been there, you ought to check it out, if you like Greek food. There's a couple of locations, but there's one over on Market Street called Mythos. Greek food, if you like it, it's really good. Anyway, we have liked, I don't remember when it was we discovered that, we've enjoyed going over there, and we almost always get the same thing, but Caroline will get the chicken souvlaki with a side Greek salad. Now, chicken souvlaki is this grilled chicken, and it's in hunks, and they put these little bamboo skewers through it, and if you order that, it comes with 2. But when we go, Caroline just wants 1. I mean, it's not because it's cheaper, even though it is. It's just that's the right amount of chicken that she wants. But when she goes and she orders, I know she's loving this now. I told you I loved you back then. She'll say, I'll have the chicken souvlaki, 1 skewer. And every time I'm like, what's a skewer? Skewer? What do you want me to say? Skewer? Yes. Yes, because it is a skewer. What's a skewer? I've told you before, I dictate my sermons using some software. And when I was doing this, the software couldn't even understand it. It put it down as sewer. But she'll say, and in fact, we went there on Friday. She said, I'll have the chicken 1 stick. But every time she's done this, I mean, there's not a chance that I let her pass on this ever, ever, ever. Every time she'll say skewer, and I'm like, what's a skewer? It's a skewer. something in her speech ability, there is a weakness in being able to put together that word to make it a two-syllable term, skewer. And what do? I highlight that weakness. But I'll say this, the person that can't pronounce skewer has taught 5 of our 6 kids to read and to read well. But that's not what I'm regularly celebrating. What am I doing? Here. Why is that? Because that's how we operate as people, isn't it? When I am looking at you, what typically comes to the fore is not your strengths, not the stuff that you're getting right, not the I's that are dotted, not the T's that are crossed. What I'm going to see are your weaknesses. And the weaknesses that I'm going to see of yours are the areas that I believe to be strengths for me. It's just human nature, even as followers of Jesus. We still do this. But here's the problem, and this is where it can be a trap. Again, Peter has said, it's not going to happen to me. No way, no how, never, ever, 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 ever am I going to abandon you. Even if they do, I can see it in this one. It's likely, I could see John doing this. Man, I could see Andrew doing this. Even though he doesn't say it, I believe that's the thought. Because what he's doing as he looks at others is to see their weaknesses. And when what you do is to see the weaknesses of others, what do you begin to do? Your shoulders go back further and further. You think of yourself to be stronger and stronger. And you say this, it will never happen to me. That's why Paul says this, let him who thinks he stand take heed, be careful, lest he fall. Peter fell because he overestimated his commitment to Jesus. And he did so because I believe he thought that the decision about Jesus was just something that you think about one time and then you check the box, you don't revisit that. Am I going to follow him today? Am I going to associate with him today? And then what he did was to look at others and their relationship to Jesus and say, compared to I've got this. As opposed to looking at the standards and the merits of his own relationship with Jesus, standards that God had given in his word, not on ways in which he is speaking to him and about following him. He wasn't thinking about his own individual relationship with Jesus. He was thinking about it in comparison to others. The trap that Peter fell into is one that you and I can as well. So what do we do? What do we do? Hearing this, you say, all right, what now? After all, if it could happen to somebody like Peter, couldn't it happen to me? Yes. Yes. And that's the point. If it could happen to a Peter, it could happen to a Michael. It could happen to a you, and a you, and a you, and a you, and all of us. It could happen to all of us. And that's the first thing that we need to realize, that it absolutely could happen. You know, because, but very easily, no. I'm at church every week. And I faithfully give, and I study my Sunday school lesson, and sometimes I even share my faith, and I've got a fish on the back of my car, and I don't speed too bad, and I'm doing all of these things right. I would never, ever, ever, when there is some sort of pressure, when there is some possibility to align myself with Jesus, I would never shirk away from that, and I would never act like I'm not one of his followers. I would never disassociate myself from him. I'm telling you, if you think that would happen, remind yourself, if it could happen to Peter, boy, could it ever happen to me. Boy, could it ever happen to you. And so maybe it is what we need to do is this. You're likely familiar with what God used Solomon to say in Proverbs 3, as we were encouraged not to lean on our own understanding, but to trust him with what? All of our hearts. Not me, not my commitment, but to trust him with all of my heart. When Paul talked to the Corinthians about being pressed beyond measure and above strength, he said this, that God permitted it so that the excellence of the power would be of him and not me. And to remind yourself this, God was never and is never interested in showcasing your strength. He's interested in showcasing his. He's not interested in showcasing your ability because yours are limited. He's interested in showcasing his. So your confidence ought to be in Jesus, not about your commitment to Him. Where's your confidence this morning? Will you bow your heads with me?